What's up, musicologists? This is another Amari Music Talk. I'm Richard Cole. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're a longtime listener, welcome back. All right, so this has been a video in the making for a very long time. Um, if you've been a longtime listener of the show, you've heard me reference Jimi Hendrix. You've heard me reference the Jimi Hendrix estate, and I've never done a Jimi Hendrix video. So today, I'm going to do a Jimi Hendrix video spotlighting this release. This is Electric Lady Studios, a Jimi Hendrix vision. This was released back in November of 2024. Picked it up pretty much when it came out. Listened to the audio several times. I watched the Blu-ray when I first got it and watched the Blu-ray again just before the show. And the Blu-ray, it's a documentary about the building of Electric Lady Studios. This was Jimi Hendrix studio. This is sort of like, this was his Paisley Park. So Prince wasn't the first to have a major studio complex. Jimi was one of the first to do so. And it's a great documentary, and I'm going to talk about that in a little while. First, I want to show you the box set. It's 3 CDs and 1 Blu-ray. And the audio contains a lot of the tracks that Jimi was working on at Electric Lady. Unfortunately, he didn't get to spend a lot of time there. Construction on the studio was complete like just before summer of 1970. And he got to work pretty much through the summer, but unfortunately, because the building of a studio or maintaining a recording studio costs a lot of money. During the week, he would record at Electric Lady, and then on the weekends, jet off and do a tour. Late August, he left for Europe for 2 weeks to tour. And like I said, this is to generate income to maintain the studio cost and, basically just keep things running, the Jimi Hendrix brand running. And unfortunately, after that 2 weeks, that's when we lost Jimi Hendrix. That was September 18th of 1970. But he left a wealth of material. He had an album. It was going to be a double album. Some called that album The Cry of Love. Other times, I think it would have been called First Rays of the New Rising Sun. Actually, once the Hendrix family would gain control of the rights to all of Jimi's music, in addition to the reissues of his original albums and remasters, there was an original compilation called First Rays of the New Rising Sun, which contained finished mixes, or the best way that they could fix or finish mixing the tunes after Jimi's passing, and remastered, remixed. And that was sort of like added to the canon of his original albums, which is one of the albums I own. I've become a major Hendrix fan since college. So we're talking like 1985. Had known Purple Haze and all of that. But probably the second thing I heard was Red House, and I became immediately hooked. And just pretty much throughout my college years, had managed to get his 3 studio albums plus Band of Gypsies, and been kind of collecting here and there. But then once the Hendrix family got control of the rights and the masters to Jimi's records and everything they put out, been collecting as much as I could. So this is definitely included in that. So like I said, you can still get this on Amazon. You can listen to the audio on your streaming platform. Comes with a book with lots of photos, information on the sessions that Jimmy recorded at Electric Lady. And so it kind of gives a little brief synopsis of the history of Electric Lady, what Jimmy's motivations were. And a lot of that information is also included in the documentary that's included here as well. So we've got packaging here. So you have the CDs and the Blu-ray packaged in this kind of special packaging here. So we've got, this is disc 1. And we've got disc 2. And we have the Blu-ray, which is in its own special packaging. And then you have, of course, the CDs are kind of in these sleeves. I don't know, kind of have a love-hate relationship with these sleeves. Sometimes it makes it awkward to try to get the CD out without damaging the CD. But, always handle your physical media with care and it will last you a long time. But this is disc 3 of the audio recordings. And when this was first announced, this would probably have been one of my most anticipated reissues by any artist. And I enjoy this a lot. Actually, over the years, this sort of late period Hendrix has become sort of my favorite era. I mean, as far as Are You Experienced, sort of the Experience era, but the Are You Experienced album, that is one that I really enjoy. As far as his official, the stuff that he released in his lifetime, the Electric Lady Nine album is probably my absolute favorite. But as far as like getting inspired to make weird sounds or different sounds or be original, Are You Experienced solidifies it. I haven't spent a lot of time with Axis Bold as Love, but I do enjoy listening to that as well. But when you kind of get into the Band of Gypsies era, when you get into where Hendrix is now spending time in Electric Lady Studios, his own environment, it's peaceful, it's a happier environment. And, he's anxious to get in there and was really hoping to get the next album finished. And there's a lot of strong material that was in rotation, that was in consideration for that album. And like I said, all 3 discs, like I said, if you're a deep cut Hendrix fan, or if you're a deep cut music fan, if you're a fan of the creative process of an artist, this is definitely the set to pick up. Because while, again, First Rays of the New Rising Sun, that compilation, like I said, it was, the goal for that was to try to mix and kind of maybe figure out where Jimmy would have wanted to go with the mix, or what his final decisions were, if there were any final notes. That was designed to make as a complete album as they possibly could make. But the 3 discs on this Electric Lady Studios box set, this is the process. This is, different takes, alternate mixes. You hear the studio chatter, you get to hear the difference between different takes, or the difference between an early version of a song or a later version. Exclusive Amari Music Talk merchandise. Visit richardcolemusic.com. Get Amari Music Talk t-shirts. We Funk to the Last Band t-shirts, and all kinds of new merchandise, everything designed by me, of course, and all proceeds help develop new content for the channel. Link in the description is below. I know, for example, Valleys of Neptune, which is on disc 1. That version, it's completely instrumental. I'm familiar with that song from the Valleys of Neptune compilation that came out like 2010, I think. So I'm familiar with that version. And again, probably to mix it and try to get it as complete as possible for that compilation. But this is the song in development. And let's see, does it pop up here? Again, let's see, I know it's on disc 1. There is, if you listen to, there's on the Blu-ray, like I said, I'll talk about that in just a moment, but you have that, you have Easy Rider, yep, and let's see, there's the Valleys of Neptune demo that's on there. Freedom, which is one of my favorite Hendrix songs. To hear the early stages of that, to hear some of the early mixes of that song throughout this set is great to listen to. Like I said, if you're the musician's musician, if you are, like I said, deep cut fan, like I said, if you're a fan of the creative process, like, you know, hearing from early take to the final mix of a song, you know, how did they get there? You know, like, you know, why didn't they use an element of that mix in the final mix? You know, those kind of questions. If you are a fan of that, again, like I said, this is the set to have. If you're a casual fan, again, I think some of the material, even though it's like in the early stages, there's a lot of just, you know, like Jimi Hendrix, just like, say, Prince or like Stevie Wonder, Tupac, you know, just relentless, constantly creating. So even something that's in a demo form, or even if it's an early mix or rough mix of a particular track, there are moments of just his guitar prowess that just continues to come through, and it's you know, it's consistent creativity. And no matter what it is or what form it's in, there's a little bit of that magic you'll find in just about every track. Like I said, some of it is demos, some of it is, you know, like maybe take one and it kind of breaks down, and then they go into a second take. A lot of times, like I said, if you're not like a deep cut, deep dive fan and not interested in that, you may not know what the fuss is about. But like I said, for those that are in the know, this is definitely, again, I can't say it enough, the set to have. Like I said, Easy Rider is one of my favorite tracks. Freedom is another one. Dolly Dagger. For that has grown on me. I'm like, it's, you know, there's a finished version or final mix version that's on the First Rays of the New Rising Sun. But I don't think I really got into it until there was a reissue of that album because the estate changed distributors. At first, they were with MCA, and then they switched over to Sony Legacy around 2009. And so when they reissued First Rays of the New Rising Sun, that version came with a DVD, kind of like a little short film talking about the making of the album. And in that DVD, there was Eddie Kramer talking about the song Dolly Dagger. And, you know, he was showing the different elements of the mix and some, you know, the different, you know, isolating some of the tracks. And listening to it then, that's when that song started to really, really grow on me. But before then, like I said, Freedom, Easy Rider, hands down, were definitely my favorites. And it was a joy to hear the different versions on this as well. Let's see, on disc one, there's a track called The Long Medley. And basically, it's just a run through of some of the songs from the sessions, uh, as well as a few, I would say, probably deep cuts. They're trying to do a take of the track Astro Man, which is a pretty good track as well. But it's nearly like 26 minutes long. There's a rendition of the song Beginnings, and this is, Hendrix with Mitch Mitchell on drums and Billy Cox on bass. There's Hey Baby, Land of the New Rising Sun. There's also a spirited jam that evolved as Keep On Moving, also Straight Ahead, Midnight Lightning, instrumental take of Freedom. And to me, this rivals the medley that's on the Beatles' Abbey Road. If they had fleshed this out, like if they were going to maybe try to do something like that, if he had lived long enough to do something like that and add that to the finished album, like I said, to me, that would have rivaled the medley on the Beatles' Abbey Road for sure. What else have we got? Let's see. Like I said, then you got Midnight Lightning and Beginnings that crops up on disc three. And again, that's still amazing. Um, Angel and Drifting. Again, songs that I've heard on First Rays of the New Rising Sun, but to kind of hear them in its rougher versions on the box set, I kind of enjoyed those more. Not to say that I didn't enjoy listening to those songs all these years, but to hear these kind of rougher versions, um, I don't know. I think you kind of pick up more of the joy and excitement that Hendrix was feeling because this was a place that he could virtually call home or his musical home. And he loved being there. And when he was away in Europe, he couldn't wait to get back. But, unfortunately, things took a turn. But I want to talk about the Blu-ray as well. And the Blu-ray has a the documentary. It was in limited release or limited theatrical release last fall, the fall of 2024. And you can get it on the box set, the Blu-ray, and that's the Electric Lady, a Jimi Hendrix Vision. And that is a really good documentary. Again, if you're the musician's musician, if you are a musician that, we have these computers and things now, but if you're a musician and say if you're at the beginning stages of learning how to work these computers and if you got a little mix board and things, I know I'm learning as I continue to make projects, and watching something like this is inspiring because you see the actual analog process of things, the way things are, are still done pretty much today, but you didn't have the digital tools to do things now that you couldn't do those back then. And they spend a lot of time at the beginning talking about how originally Jimi Hendrix wanted a little nightclub because he had been to a lot of the clubs in New York and said, hey, I think I want a nice little club and maybe put a little studio in the back. But his engineer, Eddie Kramer, was like, well, why don't we just make this into a full-time studio? And then you can have an area where you can entertain and have parties and things like that, private parties and stuff. So it talks about the genesis of the idea for the studio, There's interviews with the architect of the studio. They talk about the construction of the studio and how they acquired the different engineers. A lot of them were musicians. And I think, the way they were putting it, it's a plus if you're an engineer and you're also a musician, because you kind of can lend a little bit more of the creative process with that. So again, like I said, if you're interested in engineering, or if you're a musician and you're faced with the task of having to engineer your own stuff a lot of times, and like I said, this is something that can be very, very inspiring to check out. Um, then the rest of it, it talks about once it was built. Again, you see Eddie Kramer, you see David Palmer, and again, they're going through different tracks like Freedom and Dolly Dagger. And again, isolating different elements and talking about, how they got the mix for this, or, how they got the sound for this track, or, how they got the guitars to do this and that. And again, to me, that was inspiring to hear. And then, of course, the final part, as like I said, as tracks were coming together, as the studio was having its grand opening. And it wasn't even just for Jimi Hendrix. Carly Simon recorded an album there with Eddie Kramer. But unfortunately, Jimmy didn't get a chance to come back and really indulge and enjoy being in that studio. But to all accounts throughout that documentary, the joy and the happiness he had. And I think that's what makes these tracks, when you listen to the audio, stand apart from finished, albums like Are You Experienced or Acts as Bold as Love and things like that. And again, not to say that those aren't great albums. Like I said, I enjoy those albums a lot. But I think, again, what makes this my favorite period, because in addition to that, there's a lot of other material. Like you could listen to Band of Gypsies, that album. You can tell that was a different direction. The songs here were looking for a different direction. And like I said, it would have been interesting to see what he would have accomplished had he been able to finish this album. Like I said, unfortunately, it talks about his demise. If you are a fan of the show and you caught the previous episode talking about the Prince documentary, and how when you get to the, demise of an artist, that there's a way that you can tastefully address that. This documentary tastefully address that. They don't go into specifics. They don't go into conspiracy theories. They don't go into, you don't see crime scene photos. You don't see dead bodies or anything like that. You get like, okay, what was the last conversation with him and Eddie Kramer like? The Billy Cox, what was going on when he found out, and the road managers and the tour promoters and stuff, and people closest to him, what was going through, what was their experience on that day, and how they process that grief. And like I said, you get a lot of that inner circle as the people being interviewed, which is good. You have Steve Winwood, who was at one of the sessions and had recorded with Jimmy before, the long version of Voodoo Child, and that Steve Winwood on the probably on the B3 or the keyboards on that album. But it kind of groups together what the studio had become after Jimmy. One of the things that I am disappointed in with this is that you didn't get to talk to Stevie Wonder. I don't know if that was because of time constraints or money or budget, you know, but it would have been great to, of course, then again, that might have taken away from the central figure of this documentary, which is Jimi Hendrix. So I do get it. But it would have been nice to get like maybe just a couple of sound bites, maybe not a full interview or anything like that, but just a few, just a couple of sound bites, of Stevie talking about, the magic of the place, the maybe the spiritual energy of the place recording there. But it does talk about the magnitude of albums that had been recorded over the decades. Um, like I said, shout out if you know or have, Stevie Wonder's Music of My Mind, if you have Talking Book, if you have Inner Visions, those albums, parts of those albums have been recorded at Electric Lady. Shout out if you have D'Angelo's Voodoo, that was recorded at Electric Lady. If you have Erykah Badu's Mama's Gun, that was recorded at Electric Lady. Common, like Water for Chocolate, that was recorded at Electric Lady. Like I said, I mentioned Carly Simon earlier. Let's see, I think Led Zeppelin recorded there as well. So if you check out all of those albums, shout out if you have them, but it's still thriving today as a working studio. It's something I wish Paisley Park would do. Granted, it's a museum, that's cool, but it would be nice if it could be a viable recording space and, maybe have some greats that are still among us record in there, have D'Angelo and Questlove play in Paisley Park for a while and see what the results could be. Let's get that in there. Maybe get, if we can get the original time back together and go into Paisley Park and just bang out an album, something. But also the Blu-ray contains 20 songs. And this is pretty much an imaginary track list. I mean, there's a track list that Jimi came up with, and had he finished it, it would have been like a double album practically, with the number of songs included. But if you check out the Blu-ray, it has the 20 songs pretty much lifted from that track list that's on it, and it's in 5.1 surround. So I had a chance to listen to that when it first came out, or when I first got the set, and yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed a lot of the songs, even though, like I said, most of them I've heard, but it's nice to hear it kind of like in the context of what that album might have sounded like had he been able to finish it. So it is something that I'm looking forward to listening to over and over again. I'm also looking forward to listening to the 3 audio discs over and over and listening to it as much as I listen to the other Jimi Hendrix material. But what do you think? Do you have this set? Are you looking forward to getting this set? You can listen to the audio on streaming, so by all means, check that out. Leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. And also, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Also become a Patreon supporter. There's still the 50% off on all tiers for your first month. So if you input the code when you sign up, 9B404, and that's going to be running until the end of February. So be sure to get on that. Got some bonus material I'm going to record next week. So look forward to that. There's also great bonus and exclusive material to check out. So jump on in and become a supporter. And until the next episode, create your day, create your life. Peace.